In a small suburban town lived a man named Harold Briggs, who was known equally for his creative imagination and questionable decision-making. Harold worked as a clerk in an office supply store, and though he wasn't wealthy, he always dreamed of finding some shortcut to financial freedom. He spent late nights scrolling through online forums about life hacks, loopholes, and bizarre legal stories. One day, he stumbled across an article about a man who had successfully sued a company for negligence and collected a massive payout. That sparked a mischievous idea in Harold's restless brain. What if Harold whispered to himself, "I sued myself"? At first the thought sounded ridiculous even to him. Who sues themselves? But Harold's logic was strangely persistent. If he could somehow prove that he had caused himself harm and then force his insurance company to cover the damages, he might walk away with a big settlement. It was absurd, but Harold had always believed that absurd ideas sometimes led to greatness. He immediately began researching. He read legal blogs, scrolled through insurance policies, and watched hours of courtroom dramas for inspiration. Finally, he discovered a key detail. In certain rare cases, people had managed to file claims when they were both the plaintiff and the defendant, usually by accident or through corporate structures. This gave Harold the confidence he needed. So Harold marched down to the local courthouse, filled out the necessary paperwork, and officially filed a lawsuit against himself. Harold Briggs versus Harold Briggs. The clerk looked at him with wide eyes. "Sir, you're suing yourself?" "Yes," Harold said proudly. "I take full responsibility." News of the bizarre lawsuit spread quickly. Reporters showed up to cover what they called the strangest legal case in county history. The courtroom was packed with curious spectators when Harold's trial began. On one side of the courtroom sat Harold in a cheap suit, playing the role of the plaintiff. On the other side, Harold sat again, this time in a different jacket, playing the defendant. He had even tried to style his hair differently for each role. "Your Honor, Harold," Harold S. plaintiff began, "I have been gravely wronged by myself. My negligence has caused me emotional suffering and financial loss." Then, switching jackets, Harold as defendant stood and argued, "Your Honor, while I admit that I am at fault, I believe the damages requested are far too high." The judge, an older man with glasses, who had seen plenty of strange cases, rubbed his temples in disbelief. "Mr. Briggs, you do realize this is highly unorthodox?" "Yes, Your Honor," Harold replied, "but the law says everyone has the right to pursue justice. And I'm just trying to hold myself accountable." The courtroom erupted with laughter, but Harold stayed serious. He brought in witnesses, his neighbor, his co-worker, even his cousin, to testify that Harold could be careless and forgetful, sometimes leaving hazards around his home. He presented evidence of tripping over his own shoes, burning his hand on his own stove, and even accidentally locking himself out in the rain. Against all odds, the case dragged on for weeks. The insurance company, sensing potential risk, reluctantly joined the proceedings. Their lawyer argued that paying Harold would essentially mean rewarding nonsense. But Harold countered that if the law allowed a person to sue a corporation they owned, why couldn't a person sue themselves? The town became obsessed with the trial. Local diners sold Harold versus Harold coffee mugs, and children played mock court on playgrounds. Some even admired Harold's determination. Finally, the judge delivered his ruling. "Mr. Briggs," he sighed, "while your creativity is noteworthy, the court cannot allow someone to profit from suing themselves. To do so would set a precedent that could collapse the entire legal system. Your claim is denied." The crowd groaned in disappointment, but Harold wasn't crushed. He stood tall, bowed respectfully, and announced, "Though I may have lost this case, I have proven that one man can truly hold himself accountable." The reporters swarmed him outside the courthouse. One shouted, "Harold, what's next for you after suing yourself?" Harold grinned. "I'm thinking of appealing the case against myself." Though he never saw a penny from the insurance company, Harold became somewhat of a local celebrity. People invited him to give speeches about personal responsibility, and he even got interviewed on national television. He didn't get rich, but in his own strange way, Harold had achieved the fame and recognition he'd been chasing all along. And deep down, he knew one thing for certain. Only Harold Briggs could sue Harold Briggs and win the world's attention doing it.